Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program today. As mentioned, our special guest on the program is Clifford Coull, author of the book Like Trees Grow Together, A Spiritual Journey. Cliff, welcome to This Week in America. It's great to have you with us on the program.
Oh, good afternoon, Rick. Great to be with you today.
Well, it's a fascinating story, a fascinating book, and let's just talk briefly about the title of the book, Like Trees Grow Together, A Spiritual Journey. Where did that expression come from?
Well, my Sanskrit teacher that I had studied Sanskrit and Eastern philosophies in general for many years before he passed away. He bumped into at the mall, local mall here, with the priests of the Episcopal Church that I used to belong to, and they knew each other, of course, because their wives taught at the same elementary school. And anyway, they bumped into each other, and the priest said to him, he says, "Geez, David, it seems like Clifford is more interested in being with you than at church." And he responded back to him, he says, "Oh, I wouldn't worry about that. Like trees grow together." And he said, "Oh, wow, that's an interesting comment. Can I use that in a sermon?" And he said, "Oh, by all means, we can use that." So that's why I came up with that title for my second book, Like Trees Grow Together. It came from Dr. David Teplitz.
Well, and as you read the book, it makes perfect sense, by the way. Clifford's website is Clifford S. Coull, and Coull is COULL.com. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all across the country, and, of course, information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Let's go back to the beginning and tell your story, and let's go really back to the beginning. As a child, you were always, searching and asking questions and looking for something a little deeper than what we were seeing on the surface. In fact, your parents even encouraged that, I understand.
Oh, yes. Well, you see, I grew up with my mother was a bit of a psychic, and I never had those experiences myself, but I grew up with that. And so I've been hearing, she's having a vision or something like that. And we'd just go in one ear after out the other, as we grew up hearing that, just, okay, pass the butter, But yeah, I was a very inquisitive kid. I was always asking questions, and then when I started going to my older brother took me to Sunday school and starting that, and of course in there, then I really had the questions coming for them, So, yeah, that was me as a child. Drove people nuts with my questions.
Well, and those questions continue, and life changed. You went from Montreal to the San Francisco Bay Area. You were like 39 years old, been married for 17 years, and you went through a devastating divorce. Talk about that. You had custody of the boys, and then your life suddenly changed with these visions.
Oh, yeah, that's when I went through the divorce, and I ended up having 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. The oldest was a girl, and she was 15 at the time. And my youngest was a boy at 4, and then I had a 6-year-old and a 13-year-old. So that's what I had, and I was a single parent for a good 10 years. But when that happened, I became very introspective, of course, and that probably triggered my psychic muscle to kick in. And also, of course, I was into I got into Eastern philosophies. A friend of mine knew both my wife and I, and wanted to speak to me to see how I was doing, and she was into yoga and Eastern philosophies herself, and so she introduced me to the Eastern philosophies at that point, and attending ashrams with her, and the Vedanta Society in San Francisco. I used to go to those sessions with her. So that got me introduced to that, and then she loaned me books, and I was reading books, and I was taking that in as fast as I could read them, And so that's what started. And then all of a sudden, I started the psychic muscles. I said kicking in, and I see eyes, and I see these eyes coming up, and I said, "Well, what's this?" And I just kind of shake them off, and they go away. And then I saw the next thing. I kind of started seeing a partial face. I saw the eyes, the nose, but I didn't see the mouth or the lower part of the face. And the eyes had a nervous blink to them, and that one hung in a little longer. And I mentioned it to this lady that I had this, and I said, I think I saw enough of his face that if I ever met up with him, I would probably recognize him. And so I guess it was a couple of years passed by after that, and still active in the church and singing in the choir. And our choir directress uh, gave us notification that she'd be leaving because she's going up to a school from an English teacher or a teacher from India, a Swami from India, and she's going on a course of study with him for a couple of years up in Humboldt County. And I was kind of fond of her, and after she had gone up there, I decided to take a drive up there to see what it was all about. And so I got there, and I see on the bulletin board they had a poster up there advertising weekends of lecture weekends on the Bhagavad Gita, and called Sangita Weekends, and had a picture of the Swami there, Swami Dayananda Saraswati. And I looked at that picture and I said, boy, that sure looks familiar, to that vision I had of this partial face a couple of years before. So I ended up going to one of those Sangita weekends and attending the lectures, and then they had a break in the morning before having a breakfast. We started very early in the morning. So I went over to his residence there, and because they had what they call a satsang, which is a get-together, where the question and answer period. And so I attended that, and I went into his residence there, and I sat in a corner and tried to be as inconspicuous as I possibly can, not drawing any attention to myself at all. And the questions and answers were going on. And then there was a break, and the question stopped, and then he just turned to me and said, "Hello, sir." And the sweat just poured off my forehead when he acknowledged me there. And I just said hello, and then he was asking me who I was and getting information from me, and I told him what I did. And I said, I was working at Fireman's Fund then in the IT department, and I also had my own radio show on Sunday evenings, Cool Sounds for a Sunday evening. So I had that going. So he was pleased to hear that. So that kind of started that. And then I decided after that experience, I had to get up there and have a one-on-one talk with him. So I called the school, made an appointment, drove up to Humboldt County from Santa Rosa, and got together with him. And I told him about the vision that I had, and I said, I don't remember your beard. I said, and he says, oh, that's all right. It doesn't matter. But I did notice the rapid blinking of his eyes, and so I said, are you my teacher? And he says, yes, I will teach you. And then he gave me books, and when he wanted me to go up there for some weekends for some study, and so I would do that for a couple of times, and then the Easter vacation came, and I went up there for about a week. But of course, I had to always get back from my Sunday evening show, and so I did that. But then the summer was coming, and he wanted me up there for the summer. And then I had to write the most difficult letter of my life that I would have to write to him, and told him that I thanked him very much for his teaching of me, and I released him of any obligations. I said, but my duties, as a parent and work and so forth, there was no way I could accommodate his request for me being up there for the summer. And he got back to me and responded to that, and he sent me cassette tapes of all his lectures for the summer free of charge. I got them all in the mail.
Well, you're listening to This Week in America. Our guest on the program is Cliff Coull. The last name is Coull. His website is cliffordscoull.com. The book is Like Trees Grow Together, A Spiritual Journey. The book's available at Amazon all across the country. Information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Want to pick up on that. I want to go back to something you said before, your psychic muscle. You felt it kicked in. Do we all have a psychic muscle?
Oh, yes, we all do. I think, well, look at children, how intuitive they are, up on things and rapidly. And so I think they just become suppressed as we get older, and the pressures of life and so forth. Like my oldest son, he used to have an unseen friend growing up. He'd be talking in his room, talking up a storm, and it's just, yeah, I think we all have the psychic abilities. It's just been suppressed.
Up to this point, you are looking for answers. After you'd met with this gentleman, after you really had thought things through and the psychic muscle kicked in, were you beginning to get answers? Were things starting to make some sense to you?
Yeah, things are starting to make sense. And then I had more visions, and also the priest at church. He came up to me one Sunday and he said, "Cliff," he says, "here's something you'd be interested in." And he gave me this uh, book jacket of the cover of a book, and it was Unfolding the Petals, a new Sanskrit grammar by Dr. David Teplitz. He says, "You should contact this guy." He says, "I'm sure you'll have a lot in common to talk about." And so he's just right in the neighborhood there. Just get a hold of him. So I did. I found him and got a hold of David and got together at his house, and we had a chat. And that was the start of that relationship with him for 8 years, studying Sanskrit and Eastern philosophies in general with him, private sessions with him for years. And so he was my ultimate teacher, was with him.
At the conclusion of the book, Like Trees Grow Together, A Spiritual Journey by Clifford Coull, our guest on the program today, you have some conclusions in there, and you talk about reincarnation, that you really looked into it, you were able to prove it, you feel that basically the bodies are just here, with the soul is what's important.
Yes, the soul, the soul runs the show. When the soul leaves the body just comes up being a bunch of bone chips. So if it's cremated, it's real fast, but if it's not cremated, it just takes longer, but eventually just being bone chips. That's all the body is. And the ego just evaporates. That's gone away. So, yeah, but the soul goes on. And, yeah, and after my first book, which was Are You Wearing a Barrel? And that was a case of where I had a very strong vision. This vision kind of spooked me because it wasn't going to leave until it was ready to leave, and that was a full face. It was a female face. I knew it certainly looked like a female face to me, and I assumed it was. And it hung in there till it was ready to leave, and I ended up starting to work at the city and county of San Francisco. It's switched job, lay off one job, and got in the city and county of San Francisco. And this is about 8 years later after that vision. And then this gal shows up in our IT department in our accounting section and starts working with us. And this Latino gal, and we were attracted to each other, talking, and we'd go out and have lunch frequently, and she was Roman Catholic, and so I got into talking about the visions that I've had and the experiences I've had going through, and I said, and I talked about this vision of this young face or a young gal, and I said, come to think of it, it looked a lot like you, and she just looked at me, and then a question came into my mind. I would say, ask her when her father passed away. And she says, it was because my thinking was, if that was her, it must have been something very traumatic for her to be transmitting so powerfully to me. And so I just followed through on that intuitive thought, and I said, when did your father pass away? And she told me, and I said, oh, okay, that can't be it. And I said, it was just an idea I had, that vision I had, and maybe it was you, that because something traumatic was happening. But I said, no, this happened about 3 years before that time when your father passed away. And I put my head back down to eating my lunch, and then I look up and I see the tears are pouring down her face. I said, what is it? What's wrong? What's wrong? She says, that's when my godfather died. My father and my mother had been divorced when I was a young child. He was come out of my life. But the godfather that lived upstairs from us, he was the father figure in my life. And that's when he died. And that was a very traumatic period in my life. And the priest at the church was coming over to console her. And she was about 16 at the time when that happened. So I said, oh, my goodness. And then I said, okay, if that was her, then why me? And I figured I would never figure out the answer to that one. and then one day I was walking by her cubicle, and kiddingly, I just looked over the cubicle, and she was running around in her stocking feet, and I said, "Hey, is that up the dress code?" And she just turned to me and said, "Well, I can't see what you're wearing." He says, "You're on the other side of that cubicle wall. What are you wearing, a barrel?" And I just kind of laughed, and then it hit me. You see, in Montreal, Canada, the newspaper, the Montreal Gazette, and had an editorial cartoonist for over 41 years by the name of John Collins. And he had this cartoon character that he named You Know Who, UNO, and then WHO was the name of this cartoon character. And it wore a barrel and a hat. And, uh, and that struck me. And my father was very much into the editorial pages, and his favorite expression was whenever there was taxes in the news. Of course, that cartoon character was supposed to be the Canadian taxpayer, and so anytime there's taxes in the news, my father's favorite comment to people said, "Well, you know who's going to get stuck with that one," and, and it was a very popular cartoon. Anyone in Montreal in the 40s, 50s knew that cartoon character. Anyway, I got back to the gal after that, and I said, "Where did that come from? How you coming out asking me if I wore a barrel? Do you see somebody wearing a barrel lately?" And she said, "Oh no, things just pop into my head." And I said, "I was afraid you're going to say that." And I said, "I bet you do all the laundry at home, don't you?" She says, "Well, I do mine." And I said, "So I bet you do yours." I said, "I bet you're a real pro at, aren't you?" And she looked at me and she started describing her routine for doing her laundry. Had all these piles of clothes that she'd broken down based on fabric, color of fabric, type of fabric, have different additives for the different loads and different water temperatures. She was describing this, and tears are pouring down my face. It was like a science project. And she says, "What is it? What is it?" And I said, "You're my father. He was the laundry manager of the Royal Victoria Hospital in Montreal, Canada, which was a teaching hospital of the McGill University School of Medicine. A huge operation. He knew his laundry. And, for him, it is a science project."
That's an amazing story, and that's in Cliff's book. Unfortunately, we're rapidly running out of time. So many fascinating stories in here. The book is called Like Trees Grow Together, A Spiritual Journey. Our guest is Clifford S. Coull. His website, Clifford S. Coull, and that's COULL.com. The book is available at Amazon around the country. You can find information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Cliff, got about 30 seconds left in the program. When you tell your stories to people, and as people read the book and they get back with you, do they go, "Wow, that could be me. I had the same experiences you had and never quite understood them. Now they're making some sense"?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because I had this broadcaster from back east was speaking to him, and I'm trying to remember what his name was now. But anyway, one of the things he definitely wanted to speak to me because he says, he says, "When I was a youngster, people used to call me Jughead." He says, "And the first two girls that I dated, one was named Betty, and the other was named Veronica." And I said, "Archie." He says, "Yeah, you're familiar with that? Comic strip?" I said, "Sure. That's yeah, it's been years ago."
Oh, yes.
Archie.
Yes.
Archie, yeah. He says, "No," he says, "if that doesn't prove for me, it doesn't prove that reincarnation." He says, "I don't know what does."
We will have
So,
Cliff back on the story because there's so many things you talk about there that we all can relate to. It's just so simple, like, I don't remember when, but I think I've been here before. And then sometimes you're like, okay, that person really looks familiar. I have no idea. I mean, we will talk about this. We'll have Cliff back on the program. It's a fascinating book, and he walks you all the way through the process from the search all the way to religions and conclusion. Like Trees Grow Together, A Spiritual Journey. Clifford Coull, Coull, our guest in the program. His website, cliffordscoull.com. The book is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all around the country. And, of course, information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Cliff, thank you for joining us on the program. We look forward to having you back with us.
Be beautiful, Rick. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you. Same here. And you're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.